Any other questions or comments?
A question about the third temple. A question about the third.
Go on, what's your question?
The third temple and the cave of the patriarchs.
Go on, what's your question?
Abraham tomb, you know.
What's your question?
The question is, how about dividing the Aqsa Mosque into half of it will remain as Aqsa Mosque, and half of it will become the third temple.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage questions about the Christian faith, but I'll address this question because this gentleman wasn't here to begin with. But I'm going to address the question as a Christian.
Thank you.
I don't want to see the Alaska Mosque as a mosque, and I don't want to see it as a Jewish temple. I want to see it as a church. I want to see the conversion of all Palestinians to the Christian faith. I want to see the conversion of all Jewish people to the Christian faith. And in such a context, that mosque will be turned into a church. No Christians should support the idea of building a third Jewish temple. Because as Christians, we are committed to the belief that the church is the temple. And if we as Christians are the temple, how can we support the idea of building another Jewish temple? And as Christians, we obviously don't support the idea of building mosques or the idea of maintaining mosques. We want to see mosques converted into churches, just like when Christians liberated the Holy Land from Islamic occupation during the Crusades. What did they do with the dome of the mosque church? The dome of the mosque? They turned it into a church. It was the headquarters of the Knights Templar, ladies and gentlemen. Go on, bro. Sorry, he's asking a question.
When that happens, so you're saying if Christians ever had control of the place, they allow us to build mosques into churches.
Right, so to what?
There's still Muslims there. Wouldn't that be kind of like?
It doesn't make sense, right?
Sorry?
Wouldn't that be some sort of like?
Oppressive.
Yeah, like according to like your criteria of because you criticize us for. Like,
Okay, so the brother asks a really good point. Would it be oppressive if we turned the mosque into a church? If we did it forcefully, like Muslims did to us in our lands when they invaded and colonized Christian lands, then yes, that would be oppressive. We would be as bad as the Muslim caliphates who did that to Christian churches, ladies and gentlemen. However, I prefixed what I said based upon the conversion of the majority of the Muslim population. And if in that context they could no longer sustain and maintain that church based on their own finances and their own money, then that church could be bought. There's a mosque here in London, a Turkish mosque that's due to be closed down in London because the Muslim community can't afford it, they're not sustaining it. That church, that mosque should be bought by Christians and turned into a Christian missionary centre. And then we should do like the Muslims do. We should film it and go, look, mosque turned into church, right? Because somehow that proves something, ladies and gentlemen. Any other questions?
Yes. As a Christian, would you like to see millions of Christians being killed, millions of Jews being killed, and millions of Muslims being killed? Or would you like to see goats and sheep being slaughtered as sacrificed on the third temple?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've already addressed this question. I don't want to see a third temple. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
You don't want to see the
Go
third
on.
temple? This is God.
Sorry?
God said, build the temple.
I can't go on, talk again.
The subject of the Crusades.
Yes.
Where it's how it was a counterattack on the spread of Islam.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear, as Christians, we need to contend for our history. The Crusades were a legitimate response to centuries of Islamic aggression. Before the first crusade was launched, Muslims invaded Christian land after Christian land and persecuted Christian population after Christian population. They harassed and attacked Christian pilgrims going towards Jerusalem. The Crusades were a legitimate response to those jihads. We have bought into an Enlightenment polemic that somehow the Crusades were wrong and unjustified, that somehow the Crusades were some early colonial expedition. Not at all, ladies and gentlemen. The Crusader states only managed to survive because Middle Eastern Orthodox Christians and Latin Western Christians were willing to live and work together. The majority of the Crusader armies made up by the Crusader states were made up by Orthodox Middle Eastern foot soldiers. They were not the colonialism of the West. They were the liberation of our Christian brothers and sisters from Islamic oppression and Islamic jihad. And we should throw off the narrative that says that Christianity and the Crusades were wrong, that the Crusades were not legitimate. They were. And ladies and gentlemen, the West itself has fought against Islamic jihads. And if they can fight against Islamic jihads, how can they criticize the Christians of the past for doing the same thing? Any other final point. Any other, before I go on to any other questions, final point. As Christians, you must all contend for the history of the church, because your history frames your present. If you don't contend for your history, your enemies will colonize the narrative of your history, and they will frame the present for you. Don't let them do that. Own your history as Christians.
For educational purposes, why a Christian don't want to see a third temple being rebuilt? Although God say rebuild it.
Right. Okay. By the way, if anyone would like to have a conversation or talk about anything, I'm going to deal with his question, then your question.
Thank you. 3, 2.
On camera? You want to stand off camera then? All right. So I'll answer the question for the third time because this brother's not listening. Because I've answered this question 3 times already. I'm answering it for the third time. As a Christian, I want the Jews to become Christians. If they become Christians, they will believe that the Holy Spirit dwells in the people of God. That is the temple of the New Covenant, and therefore, as Christians, we don't support the building of a third temple. Brother, do you want to ask a question?
You are not fair.
Brother, do you want to ask a question?
You see, you are...
Sorry?
It's about masculinity.
Do you want to have a conversation? Yeah, go on.
Just before I leave, excuse me.
No, I'm sorry, I'm having a conversation with him.
I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave.
I'm going to have a conversation with him.
I'm going to leave. But I must tell you that God said, build a temple. You are doing ungodly work.
I believe, build a temple. Well, I don't like saying field. I believe that you describe universal man. You don't have to be a Christian